Hello guys, it's Sneaker Klev bringing you another video in the Sneaker Vault series, and today we're tackling one of the most well-known shoes of all time. One of the good old classics, a shoe that more than 50% of all Americans admit to own, or at least have owned at some point in their lifetime. I am here talking about the one and only, the Chuck Taylor All-Stars. Now, the Chuck Taylor All-Star is easily one of the most easily recognizable shoes in the sneaker world. With its canvas upper and thick rubber sole, and the fact that it comes in all of the colors of the rainbow, make this shoe easy to spot from miles away. But how did this shoe become the classic that it is today? Well, for that story we have to go back, and I mean all the way back. In 1908, a guy by the name of Marquis Mills Converse founded the Converse Rubber Shoe Corporation. And before they made sneakers, they mainly produced galoshes and other rubber shoes, and this happened on a seasonal basis. But this was about to change as the popularity of basketball rose in the States. Converse saw an opportunity to create a shoe for this market, and in 1917 they did. Coming in a neutral brown colorway with black trim, this shoe would go on to become one of the biggest icons in the sneaker and fashion world. This was the Converse All-Star, and while sales were low in the beginning, this would soon take a dramatic turn by the 1920s with the help of one guy, and his name was Charles H. Taylor. Charles H. Taylor, or Chuck Taylor as he is also called, was a basketball player who played for the Akron Firestones. But besides being a basketball player, Charles was also a salesman, and a very good one at that. He came across the shoe in 1921 and saw so much potential in it that he later the same year joined up with the Converse sales force, and also later became the head coach for the Converse All-Stars, which were the company's industrial basketball league team. While being a good basketball player and coach, Charles was also a magnificent salesman for Converse. His great sales skills and ideas helped drive up the sales for the Converse All-Star. He would do this by hosting public basketball clinics for aspiring basketball players and promote the shoe there. He would also create the Converse Basketball Yearbook, which was a yearbook filled with articles, stats, and pictures all about basketball. It was these ideas that made him a valuable asset to Converse, and it would pay off because in 1932 Converse bestowed upon him something truly special. And that was not only allowing him to make changes to the All-Star shoe, but changing the name of the shoe altogether by adding Charles's nickname Chuck to the ankle patch alongside his last name Taylor, and thus the Chuck Taylor All-Star basketball shoe was born. One of the more interesting years for Converse and the Chuck Taylors was in 1936 when the Chuck Taylors became the official shoe of the US basketball team in the 1936 Olympic Games. This meant that they ended up creating a whole new colorway for the shoe, this time in white with a patriotic trim of red and blue. And not only did they create this shoe for the US basketball team, but they actually released it to the public as well, and it was very well received. And it is also worth to note that if you like what you're seeing on screen right now, they still produce the colorway to this day, so you can actually go out and buy a pair. Another interesting fact about Converse is that during World War II, Charles Taylor served as a captain in the United States Air Force, and during his time he coached the Army's different basketball teams. While this may not be seen as important as being a soldier, this was still seen as an important morale booster for the troops, and the high-top Chuck Taylor would be worn by the troops during exercises and also training. It would be these shoes that became the official sneaker for the United States Armed Forces. In 1946, a year after the war ended, Converse introduced a couple of new colorways, including the high-top black and white colorway, who would be worn by almost all basketball players who found themselves playing in the biggest newly formed basketball league to date. This is, of course, the National Basketball Association, or the NBA for short. And by 1968, Converse had changed into a powerhouse in the shoe industry. Sitting on 90% of the market share, Converse was a force not to be reckoned with. It was also at this time that Charles Taylor was named the ambassador of basketball and inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame for his continuous effort to promote the sport. And it truly seemed like nothing could stop Converse. But even the mightiest tend to fall, and only a year after his induction, Charles Taylor sadly passed away. And this would be the beginning of the end for Converse. By the 1970s, Converse began to feel their grip slip as Nike entered the shoe market and slowly began taking Converse's place as the preferred athletic shoes company. With their new designs and shoe technology, Nike powered through, and Converse could feel that. This made Converse change up their focus and switch the image of their shoes from being athletic to being more laid back. This created the view of the Chuck Taylors as the lifestyle shoe that we know today, and with the help of musicians of the 70s who would adopt the Chuck Taylors, they also helped create this picture of the Chuck Taylors as a fashionable lifestyle shoe for the counterculture. Which is ironic to say the least, as the Chuck Taylors were once the official shoe of the United States Armed Forces. But anyway, Converse responded to their new market by upping their production numbers of the shoe and also releasing the Chuck Taylors in different colors, patterns, and prints for all age groups. But this just wasn't enough, as the 80s and 90s were some tough years for Converse. Multiple bad business decisions and also frequent changes in ownership resulted in Converse filing for bankruptcy in 2001. They were later purchased by their rival Nike in 2003 and are today functioning as a subsidiary under Nike. And this is actually pretty interesting, seeing as Nike and Converse had an ugly and bloody rivalry going on, and many speculate why Nike chose to do this. I mean, my personal bid on it is that besides it being a good business decision to buy Converse, who had a rather big market share at the time, Converse has, as I've stated earlier, a lot of history. And history is priceless in the business world. It's something you just can't buy. I mean, it's only something you can create. And Nike probably thought that with some changes and the right people, they could make some good money off that history. Okay guys, that was a lot of history for just one shoe, so let's begin to talk about the overall design. Now, the design of the Chuck Taylors is just genius. I mean, while it is seen as one of the most iconic shoes in the sneaker community, its design is rather simple. Coming in a thick rubber sole with a canvas upper, this shoe is the epitome of minimalistic. But the changes that Converse decided to go with when it came to their focus helped this shoe big time, as the upper can be bought in different materials and also in all of the colors of the rainbow. This sneaker is easily one of the shoes in the world with the most variety, and one you are guaranteed to find in your size and also at a rather low price point compared to other sneakers today. But while it may be seen as blasphemous to change a classic, Converse also released different versions of the Chuck Taylor, such as their Oxford model, which is more or less a low version of the Chuck Taylors, coming in at just as many colors and materials as the classic itself. And as if the normal colorways weren't enough, the Chuck Taylors also received a number of amazing collaborations from brands like Comme des Garçons, Nintendo, and Kif x Coca-Cola, which all in all just adds to a shoe that is already amazing and just shows how much this shoe truly matters to the world of sneaker fashion. Alright guys, we're at my favorite point of the video where I get to give my own opinion on the shoe itself, and personally, I do not like the Chuck Taylors. But if I can have a moment to defend myself, this does not mean I don't like shoes from Converse. While I love sneakers from Nike and more specifically Jordan brand, I do enjoy some of Converse's shoes. Shoes like the Converse Oxford, the Converse Weapon, and the Fast Mid Breaks are some of Converse's best looking shoes, at least in my opinion. And I personally think that the Oxford model is the best low version shoe you can buy, everything taken into consideration. I currently own a pair of Fast Mid Breaks, the ones that you can see up on screen right now, and trust me, when the snow eventually disappears, I will break them out, pun intended, and I will love them. but the Chuck Taylor All-Star just doesn't do it for me. I just don't like the high top cut and would rather wear an Air Jordan 1 if I had to choose a high top sneaker. But this does not mean I can't appreciate this shoe. It's one of the biggest shoes to ever be created. Its first iteration released in 1917. That's over 100 years ago. I dare you to name another silhouette that still holds up 100 years after its release. It's truly a classic, iconic in every sense of the word. And while there may not be as much hype surrounding it today, this shoe still functions as the grandpa to all basketball shoes. And at least in my opinion, I believe that you should respect your elders while they are still here. But anyway, that's all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did so, and remember to comment your own opinion on the Chuck Taylors down below, and also remember to subscribe for more sneaker history. I will see you next time.